Hi, and thank you for joining us for another segment of Wildlife Wednesday. For our viewers out there, you may have noticed that we have been following a couple of patients recently, one of which is an American bald eagle that came into us with some feather damage, impeding its ability to fly. So on today's segment, we're going to meet our rehab team down at the hospital to talk a little bit more about the process known as feather implanting or imping.
Hi, I'm Brianna. I am a certified wildlife rehabilitator and I'm the rehabilitation manager here at Crow.
And my name's Morgan. I'm also a certified wildlife rehabilitator here at Crow. And thank you for coming to today's Wildlife Wednesdays. We're going to be talking about how to imp some feathers. Feather imping is when we take a bird or a patient that has had damaged feathers, usually the primaries, secondaries, or even the tail, and we replace them with intact feathers to help them regain their flight, to be able to release them so they do not have to stay in the hospital to molt their feathers out.
So here at Crow we have what we called a feather bank, and that feather bank has all types of different feathers from different species that we have saved from patients that unfortunately have passed away but had feathers that were well intact and good enough to give to other birds in need. So when we catalog those feathers, we keep wing feathers from both wings, their primary feathers, and we also keep their tail. Now in this process, we do have to pull the feathers out, so we do that once the bird has actually passed away, and then we keep them to make sure that we know exactly what order they're in on the bird, so when we put them on the new bird, they're in the appropriate order and lead to tip-top conditioning.
Bree, does it matter where the feathers go? Like feathers, depending on what they are, they kind of look the same.
They do look the same, and it absolutely matters where they go. Each feather has a unique special type of thing that it does for the bird. So the further out feathers, the primaries, are used for really good flight, hunting, and that type of thing, whereas some of the smaller body feathers aren't necessary to imp when they are in need. So if we took a feather from the outside and put it towards the inside of the bird's wing, they would not be able to fly appropriately and therefore would not be able to successfully survive.
And Bree, I have one more question about the feathers. Like I heard it's illegal for people to collect feathers. How are we able to have these feathers here at Crow?
It is. We're very lucky to have a specialized permit that allows us to take these feathers, harvest them, and then reutilize them to give patients new feathers. So you do have to have appropriately licensing through the state, through federal government, based on the birds that we see here.
As Bree was mentioning down at the hospital, sometimes animals that come into Crow are not able to be re-released. When some of these patients passed, they can serve a greater purpose in our hospital in really two different facets. One of which, with this eastern screech owl, is that feathers from this deceased owl can be used to perform life-saving treatments for patients who have these damaged feathers. And then the other way that this is really served is through an educational tool, since Crow does function as a teaching hospital. We welcome interns from all over the world to learn about wildlife care. And one of the best chances that they can learn how to administer treatments is by practicing on deceased animals at Crow.
So we see various species that come into Crow with feather damage, and it can be caused by a variety of injuries. It can be a hit by car victim, it can be a glue trap victim, it can also be a predator attack, all of those can cause it to lose feathers. With this patient here, it did sadly get hit by a car, and we are using it as a teaching tool today for our imping procedure. And as you can see, it is missing feathers at the tip of its wing on the primaries, so this would make it not be able to fly in the wild. Now if this animal came into us and all he was missing was these individual feathers, we do not want him to be in our hospital to wait the months it would take to have him molt out those feathers naturally. So what we would do is take these broken feathers, we need to make sure that they're short enough for the new feathers, such as these, to be able to fit perfectly into the feather shafts, which are the white tips coming out.
So Morgan, with those feather shafts, can you just put the feather directly back in, or is there something else you have to do with it?
No, so we cannot put it directly back in like what you're saying. We would have to make a support structure on the internal area so that it holds together nicely. So what we would do is cut the two tips as short as we would need to go, cut the tip of the other wing that we're going to be putting in, and then we can either use popsicle sticks, we can use toothpicks, we can use other old feather shafts that were given to us by birds that had again sadly passed away but will be used for other procedures. And we can take those, put them in the inside of the shafts like so, use a little bit of glue, and that will create enough support structure to hold those two together, and they're a natural substance that we're not giving anything extra out into the wild. So as those hold together, they will allow the bird to then fly. And this is what it would look like.
So Morgan, would those inked feathers stay with the bird the entire time, or would those naturally molt out the way others would?
So this would stay with the bird while it is attempting to molt, and then once it does come into its natural molt, it will push that old feather out as the new feather comes in, and this fake feather will fall out while the new one comes in, giving it a more natural molt and feathers. But this just allows it to fly and to hunt until it does decide to molt those feathers.
So obviously this is an abbreviated version of what an imping procedure would look like. Approximately how long would this take on a living patient at Crow?
So with these patients, we do make sure that they are under anesthesia. It's easier to work with the patient while they're under, and it's also for us to be very quick. We can have everything lined up like you see with our feathers off to the side, and then once we have all of our stuff situated, it can take about anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes max to make sure all these feathers are perfectly lined up and in place for that animal.
Well, keeping feathers in our feather bank is a very difficult job, and we always have to make sure we have the appropriate feathers on hand. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for learning with us about feather imping and the importance of it and what we do here at Crow.
Thank you, Bree and Morgan, for sharing all of that wonderful information for our audience today. If you enjoyed what you learned about on this segment of Wildlife Wednesday, please click the donate button up above or continue to follow us on social media. Have a good day.